So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Ursula Sims, WePan Executive Director and CEO. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Usability, Data and Accessibility, Design Risk. This is part two of a three-part series on our understanding the risk in device and product design and development. So at WePan, our webinars explore topics that are essential to advancing engineering practice and strengthening the broader STEM ecosystem. Today's session highlights the medtech sector, where thoughtful design, rigorous development processes, and engineering excellence are critical to delivering innovative solutions that are reliable, impactful, and accessible. For those who may not be new to WePan or not fully familiar with us, we're a nonprofit educational organization founded in 1990. We're recognized as the leading organization in North America for leveraging research and evidence-based practices to strengthen participation, achievement, and innovation in engineering. Through collaboration, innovation, and data-driven insights, we strengthen pathways that prepare and support a highly skilled engineering workforce capable of meeting the evolving needs of both industry and society. We connect individuals and organizations across academia, industry, and nonprofits, providing professional development resources and evidence-based strategies that expand participation and support success from college through executive leadership. Our goal is to foster environments where talent can excel and innovation can truly flourish. One example of this is our entrepreneurship and innovation programs, which support emerging innovators to develop and scale impactful ideas. Today's webinar is a direct extension of that initiative as it was developed by one of our accelerator fellows, bringing practical real-world insight into the med tech development process. I will now turn it over to WePan board member and Professional Development Committee Chair, Dr. Mike Smith, to introduce our facilitator.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to host this webinar, this webinar series in partnership with ES Biodesign Consulting, whose work focuses on advancing thoughtful design and innovation in healthcare. This session explores how users actually interact with the device, how data is collected and managed, and how design assumptions can create accessibility barriers that ultimately limit product effectiveness and adoption. You will gain practical insights into recognizing usability and accessibility issues before they impact product success, as well as understanding the role of responsible data practices and device development. Whether you're new to MedTech or looking to strengthen your understanding of development processes, we hope this session provides practical tools and valuable perspective. With that, I'm excited to introduce our facilitator for today's webinar, Renee Kennedy, who's the CEO and founder of ES Biodesign. Renee is a consultant, public speaker, writer, researcher, sociologist, bioengineer, and pop culture educator. Her previous research examined how laboratory culture influences social equity and bioengineering design. She has collaborated with and presented for the National Society of Black Engineers, the Biomedical Engineering Society, the American Sociological Association, and Stanford Biodesign. She is also a member of the 2025 cohort of the WePan Entrepreneurship and Innovation Accelerator, Synergize. Renee specializes in combining social science, business development, and engineering design to help teams design products that intentionally improve social impact. With that, I'm proud to turn it over to Renee.
Hello, thank you so much for the introduction, Dr. Smith, Dr. Sims. It's so great to be here. As said before, the Women in Engineering Proactive Network has been an amazing help in developing this series of workshops and the products that we're using, the software. Literally would not exist without WePan and the Synergize Accelerator program. So I thank you guys for watching me go from infancy to where we are today. Really look forward to working with everyone. And this is meant to be an interactive workshop. So at any point, come off camera, come off mute, ask questions, leave them in the chat, et cetera, et cetera. But thank you guys for having me. And with that being said, let's get started.
And
Okay,
as you get started, Renee, I wanted to ask if folks wanted to share questions or things like that in the chat, they're welcome to do that, correct?
awesome.
As you go
Yes.
along. Perfect.
Yes. And if you see a comment in the chat or a question in the chat, feel free to say it out loud if I don't catch it quickly. Okay. With that being started, who is with us in the room today? I actually saved this slide from a presentation that was going to be done during the pandemic. And it was for STEM Noir. So we have all of these musicians on here, and I'm curious, what vibe are we getting out of folks today? Are we getting folks who are more interested in the old school? We see this old picture of Shaka Khan right here. We have the 90s where Missy Elliott and Mary J. Blige and R&B were the vibe. To the left, we have Nina Simone, we have Tracy Chapman, Tina Turner. We have any rock and roll fans in here? And we even have some modern R&B artists and some hip hop artists as well. If anyone is interested in rap, I'm just catching a vibe for who is in the workshop today. Or any of these artists, folks that you guys listen to. Okay, Mary J. for life. Love that. Myself as well. Turner. Hey, she's timeless. Okay, she's timeless. I saw Shaka Khan live in concert a few years ago. Probably the best concert I've ever been to. Her vocals have not changed. It was insane. Okay, so thank you guys for interacting with me. Please keep interacting in the chat. This is meant to support you guys. So this is actually our second workshop in this series, as said earlier. So if you guys didn't get a chance to make the workshop one, we will drop the link in the chat before the end of this program so you guys can watch it on YouTube and ask any comments, questions, et cetera, et cetera. It was very helpful, and we dropped a worksheet for you guys there. But we talked about where our designs might be useful when thinking about product design. We talked a lot about what parts will physically interact with humans. So the very basics of understanding our design, right? Who is it going to help? What are we going to build it out of? And what materials should we use? So we talked about sensors, placement of sensors and materials and sampling and just basic usability. But today we're going to get into the fun part of the designs where often engineers get stuck. Can people actually use your design? Can they understand it? Can they access it? Can they trust it? So that is what we will talk about today. And I would love if you guys could take some time and fill out the QR codes on the screen. So first, we just have a very simple 2-question survey of who is in the room, if we have any attendees from last time, and how you heard about this. So if folks could just take a second to scan it, I will give us about 2 minutes or so to complete this, and then we can move on to our next section. And also, I'm curious if folks are accessing this via mobile device, via laptop. We aim to make everything as accessible as possible. So if folks want to let us know what you're tuning in on so that we can optimize our next series of workshops. That'd be fantastic. But I'll give it a few more seconds and then we can move on. See if we're getting interesting responses. Laptop, mobile phone, okay. And if folks at any point are struggling with a QR code, we can always drop a link in the chat. So that is an option as well. Okay, let's continue. Trying to fill out the form on your phone. Oh, a layered login, so it's taking time. So instead of us pushing you to figure out that QR code or figure out the Google form. This one isn't as critical. So if you'd like to come off mute or type in the chat, Elizabeth, about how you heard about this workshop and drop your email if you're interested in receiving any free services, which is actually a benefit of attending this workshop. So all attendees will have a basic audit package valued at about 1,200, where it includes a product audit, some advising, as well as an audit of the culture of your organization. So if you're interested, drop your email in the chat. If not, oh, just got it done. Awesome. Okay. So let's move on. Okay. So Phoebe is a framework for ethical design. Can you drop the link in the chat? Absolutely, I can. Let's just take a second and pull up the form. I'm glad somebody asked. So anytime somebody comes into the room, there will be a new, like they won't be able to see the chat. So if you guys are able to see new people pop in, please feel free to let me know. Ask me to send things out again in the chat. I'm more than happy to do so. So I'm going to take some time and head back to this window. And I also want to get this other link ready. But while I'm getting it ready, we'll show what's on this slide. So we are going to be able to look at all of these different factors in our device design today. And often when folks are designing, they might focus on one of these things at a time. And that's typically not how it works because, right, you start building, thinking about your user and it's great. And then you're like, well, we have to go to market. This isn't actually sellable. And then you scrap the idea. You say, what can we sell? And then you forget about your user. Or you somehow manage to do both of them, and then you get stuck with compliance. So the idea of this software and this framework is to allow you to look at everything at once and give you these actionable changes that can be completed across your design. So if you look at all these factors here, obviously there is a lot to worry about. And how many of you guys are early stage, like super early stage devices or even concepts? Can I see in the chat or a raise of hands? And could you also put in the chat if you are later stage, have worked in a startup, later experience? I'll give it just a second, but the context obviously matters. Some folks are working in academic research centers and laboratories where by the time the innovation turns into a startup, right, and gets out there, it's out of the hands of the folks working on it. A capstone design course, that's awesome. Want to take into a startup. Yes, my senior design project is currently still a startup now, and some of my group members are working on it. So academia is often where the best innovation starts. And I'd be very interested in hearing more about some of these projects. So feel free to share as much as you want in the chat. I appreciate your participation. Okay, seed stage. Awesome. Super exciting. And validation can look all sorts of ways. So we're going to break things down to make it easier. It sounds like we have people out of a variety of the across the spectrum. Students are typically super early stage, although they might start with a defined problem if they're partnering with a company. A startup and seed stage is certainly still early stage by a lot of standards, but if you are the person who's been in the company, you've been at this for a minute, right? So you have likely spent a lot of time in thinking about things like your hardware, how are your users using it, your product functionality, right? So this is meant to help all of you, right? But the more information you have, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. So let's get into our agenda for today. We have three modules we're going to focus on, and I'm also going to see if I need to paste this link into the chat next. So we're going to focus on user flow and interface design. Also, side note, if you are more interested in the hardware part of things and some components of user literacy, I strongly encourage you go into our last workshop and review the materials for that because they were super thorough. But today we're going to focus more on user interface, data and accessibility, and equity risks. And by the end, you should actually have a draft of instructions for use, saying how your product is going to be used, documenting what is the flow of how your users use your product. You might have the beginnings of what is going to be your interface, what is going to be the framework of the data used, as we call a data architecture, and what we're also calling an equity risk inventory, which is this idea that there are risks associated with how equitable your device is. And this is also something not commonly thought about, but hopefully after today, some folks can see the light and see how equity risks are actually very much so focused, connected to a lot of the pitfalls we have in design. So that is enough talking for me for now. Let's actually get into the workshop part of the workshop, right? So we are going to be working in this document the entire workshop. So if folks want to pull up this QR code, this is going to be your golden ticket. This is going to be where you can complete your responses. You have some reflection questions. There's some helpful information in there. It's like a guide for your product. So we will spend all day filling this out. And if you have completed workshop 1, you'll notice part 0 is similar, so you can go ahead and skip that. And we have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Renee, that at the top of the screen, for those of us that see it, there's a dialog box for you to enter. It's just about a Google Doc, and it's covering the part of your hyperlink. So I don't know if you can see it in presentation mode, but it's just asking you to click one of the buttons. There you go. Now it just disappeared. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hopefully you guys see a clean screen. I see a meeting chat, some presenter notes, so myself on the side, pictures of you. So my screen looks like a scrapbook. Okay, so I have this link right here in case you guys are Oh, actually, this is the link to our first workshop. But if you scan the code, we can get to our second workshop. So I leave this on the screen and then I'll take a second and actually put this in the chat. So let's see what we can do. Okay. Please let me know if you are struggling. Does everyone have access? Can we get a thumbs up? Okay, I see one thumbs up. So we're going to take a few minutes and actually fill this out. Again, this is going to be the crux of the workshop and allow you to think through some things you have not already thought before. So our section 0 is just taking inventory of what we have. So perhaps if you are a seed stage company, you likely have something about your product, like a one pager. I know you have a pitch deck. Maybe you have some grant applications. Maybe you have some notes on regulatory pathways, some ideas, right? So just take some time and fill out the first question, and just check through. If you are more academic based, you likely have not developed a pitch deck, right? Maybe you have a research presentation. Maybe you actually have a full on concept paper that is in the form of some research. Maybe you have product specifications or designs, CAD files, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to take insight or take inventory of all of that. And there is one more checkbox on question 2 or on page 2. So if you scroll down, you'll see that we couldn't fit that on page 1. And I'm just curious on if folks have a lot of these materials or if, all of this is new. So for those of you who have at least 2 of these, could you put a thumbs up or let us know? Okay, no one so far, and that's okay. We could be working completely early stage, but these are documents that if you are moving towards Series A, if you are moving towards, we'll say, getting your device out there to market, to helping people, you are going to have to go through the process of generating all of these. So this place is a great start, right? So moving on to our next section. We're going to get into our first module. So as you see, there's a QR code at the link or at the top of every slide. It will be the same document we're working in, just for folks who are new to this or hop in late, they have an opportunity to scan this as well. So our first module, let's think about the user. We know that if a user can misuse it, they probably will. Think about all the products that you stopped using, that you bought, and you were like, this is going to be super cool. But then you realized the battery life wasn't as long as it should have been. Or you missed notifications. Or it made your life a little bit more complicated. Or it was something you put in the wrong spot, or you just didn't get good data out of it, or just was too complicated to even set up. This is fairly common, and we want to avoid this pitfall. So I'm curious on if this technology was bad, or if this experience was frustrating, or anything comes to mind when we talk about something that you had yourself that you wanted to use, or maybe something you've built that you thought, okay, the users are surely going to understand this, but they don't. And if anyone has anything, now's a great time to say it. But in the meanwhile, I would like everyone to continue on with our worksheet. So we are now on section 1, which is on page 2, and this is our device identity. So also take some time to fill this out. Just your device name, your team name, who it is, what it's for, and what setting it's used. All of this was completed during workshop 1, so if you already have it, feel free to skip this part, but if not, just take a second to actually think about these things and define them as succinctly as you can. Some other questions we have. What clinical, wellness, or functional outcomes does your product aim to support? And what is the most important thing that your device needs to do? This is your core task. Also, who's paying for it? Is it the consumer buying it off the shelves? Is it the insurer? Is it an institution? Is it a hospital? Is it a clinic? Is it a rehabilitation center? Is it a research program? Or is it a combination of all of those? Or is it something else that we completely missed? I'll say 1 more minute before we can scroll down and head to our next section. Is all of this easy to define? I'm just curious. And while folks are thinking about that, we will continue on with section 1. So there is another question we're asking. And this is the checkbox that nobody wants to check, right? So how many of you have heard of correction factors? Have any of you heard of correction factors? And it's okay if not. Okay, so we'll start from scratch. Correction factors are these features or settings on devices that will be adjusted based on the user you're designing for. One example of correction factors could actually be in algorithms such as diagnostics for kidney disease, right? So when you go and get your measurements, they'll give you a measurement called your EGFR, which is the filtration rate of what's, of your kidneys and how things are working. You actually get two scores. You get an EGFR if you are African American, and you get an EGFR if you are not African American. On every exam, it shows up. However, they changed this about a year ago because they realized that this correction factor had no use whatsoever, and was actually creating problems. Can anyone guess why?
Sorry, ask your question one more time.
Yes, I said the had these correction factors for kidney rate filtration, and they were based on if you were African American or not, and this was a standard across all clinical practices. But this actually was not useful, and can anyone guess why?
Because it was based on one target population versus a broader population, I would imagine.
Based on one target population, I mean, that is a point, right? Like a good question. Why did they single out one population? I like that train of thinking. Elizabeth asked if these factors were not grounded in data and led to inaccurate measures. Absolutely. So, what had happened was there was an assumption years ago that African Americans had larger muscle mass. Was this based in any actual data? No. Also, muscle mass is something that is completely measurable, right? We even have like smaller indicators that might be relevant to body size that you could have done quickly, right? You could have even done BMI if you were looking for some sort of way to calibrate this. But instead, they just looked at you and asked you to fill it out basically on how you socially identify, and they gave you a score. That was problematic for many reasons. And one of the reasons that it was problematic wasn't just because it singled folks out and made them different, it actually made them less eligible. So if 10 years ago you were going to get a kidney transplant, that score would have been evaluated in, how bad do you need this kidney? And because you had higher muscle mass, they basically assumed that you could function at a lower capacity. You were less eligible. So this was changed very recently, like in the last 5 years or so. But a lot of this tends to hang around. A lot of times we think we're doing good because we're thinking about different groups or we're adding buttons in there. But ultimately, we're hurting a lot of people, right? And a lot of doctors still want to help people, but just weren't aware of this. So we actually have a question on our form if you are still on section 1 and on that page 2, where we ask if any sort of correction factors are applied to your sensor output, right? So thinking about the device you're designing and the technology you want to create, it makes sense to correct for some things, right? If we are building something that goes around your wrist, for example, you would like to think about the size of someone's body. That matters. So some things should be corrected based on what's going on in your body and how it's made. Some things should be corrected based on how high, like tall, excuse me. I was going to say height and tall at the same time. How tall a person is. Some correction factors might be relevant for age, right? You can make a lot of assumptions there. There's a lot of really good data, but the closer you actually get to measuring what's on the body and having established measurements as opposed to a social identity, the stronger things are going to be. So I suggest you really take some time and think about this because some correction factors could be good. For example, correcting for race or skin tone. A lot of us know about the pulse oximeters. Some of us know about these smartwatches where the little green light on the bottom has something called the green light effect. And because of the technology used in this, we are receiving outcomes and outputs that are different and less accurate based on the tone of our skin. This is also relevant if you have any sort of pigment. So let's say I'm fair skinned, but I have a tattoo right where the sensor is, or I have some sort of a bunch of freckles or something like that. So it is good to think about correction and the differences in people's bodies, but let's think about it in a productive way. So I have a follow-up question right below this question in our worksheet. How are you actually disclosing this information? And are you eliminating this information? Are you actually striving to have it? Very important things. And then I will give you a couple of more minutes to fill out the rest of this. So we can talk more about our user interface. And actually, before we move on, I have an example. So is anyone familiar with anything on the screen? Either of these two technologies? Has anyone seen these before? Or can anyone guess what they are?
Renee, should we be seeing a picture or photo or?
Um, are you seeing the slide?
We see the check box nobody wants to check.
Hmm. Uh-oh.
Now we see it.
Oh, I see. So with screen sharing, you are seeing the whole window. I don't know.
Yeah, but we see it now. We see the Google glasses and two other devices, so we can see that screen now.
Okay, sounds good. So with the Google glasses, you identified them, right? Google Glass. The other technology is called the Pro Glove. These two technologies were literally told, people were saying they were going to be game changers, right? When they came out. Like it's Google, biggest company and one of the biggest companies of the world. And ProGlove was really interesting because for folks who are doing a lot of manual labor and they're scanning, they're packaging, they're doing manufacturing work, obviously it's very grueling on the body. So if we can make the process easier for them, we'll cut down on workplace hazards. We will cut down on the time it takes to do things. We'll make ourselves more efficient. We'll be more productive. And BMW actually was one of the leading companies to incorporate this technology for their workers. They had an entire period where they went through, it was free for all workers to use. And guess what? Do you think either of these technologies are being used today? ProGlove is likely being used, but not at BMW anymore. And this is because they didn't design for their users, right? Google Glass was super expensive. It was inaccessible and it really didn't have any use. They didn't show anything super cool that people were doing with it. And Pro Glove, obviously, it had a great use. It sounded fantastic, but it was hot in the workhouses. So no one wanted to put on the glove because you were already making an uncomfortable experience more uncomfortable. So even though they showed they were saving on average 4 seconds per scan, the technology ultimately was not something that was attractive to the user. It wasn't comfortable to the user. Some other examples are health apps, for example. How many times have you downloaded a workout app and you said, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I need. I like this. And then after a little bit, the app offloads. You can't see it anymore on your screen. You fall back into your routine. There's a lot to think about in order to make something actually attractive to people and not only make it attractive, but make people be retained. So take some time and think about what might create this sort of friction in your device today. In fact, we can go to our worksheet and actually fill out more things on our user interflow, our user workflow in our interface. So thinking about how the user is going to interact with it is going to tell you everything about if the user actually will use it. We have some more questions here about your design. Does it actually reduce user error or misuse? Are you making claims? Have you tested this yet? And we just have this quick, intuitive checklist. You know, are you using icons that are universally recognizable, right? If you have a little mail button at the bottom, we're guessing it's to send a message, right? Are you giving people feedback that it's working or not? A lot of these things are things that folks will put off till the end and they'll say, oh, yeah, like we can just worry about that when it comes time to our final mock up. But if you're not thinking about this early, by the time you get to the end, it might not even be practical to do some of this. So thinking about this early stage will help you avoid a lot of errors later. In our research, we also have something called the sensory load architecture, which is actually about how the users might experience things. So if you're a user like myself, you don't like to deal with too much sound. I live a pretty quiet life, ironically. I have a loud voice, I live a quiet life. So I do not want a device that's screaming at me, but If you've ever seen one of those glucose monitors that sit on people's arms and somebody has low blood sugar, it is going off all of the time. It goes off when your blood sugar is high, when your blood sugar is low, when you walk away. And we know it can be helpful and useful, but people get burnt out by those notifications. So thinking about how are you going to actually let the user know they're doing a good job is something really important. So consider your light output, consider your sound, consider your alerts, consider vibration as a technique. Is there a quiet mode? Are your alerts actually necessary? Another thing that can really make or break a technology and be the reason why you can get to market just a little bit faster. Some other things to consider, or the last thing to consider, is if a metric is displayed. By that, what I mean is when I go onto my smartwatch, right? I can scroll down and see how many steps I've taken for the day, how much sleep I got last night. And some of this is useful, some of it's not, right? I don't need to actually know if I got sleep last night by looking at a watch. On the app, sure, that makes a lot of sense. But thinking about your display is going to be a big part of the device you're designing. And it's rare where folks are developing anything that has no user interface whatsoever, right? Because even if your device doesn't have a screen, maybe it has an app to record the data. And if there's no app to record the data or there's minimal data involved, you have to think about how you're still collecting whatever form of data. So maybe it's not electronic, but either way, there's something there, right? So what does your display include, or is there no display? I'll take a few more seconds and then we're going to move on to module 2. Okay. Time for the physical design and the system architecture. Getting into this a little further. A question I have for you all is who's actually looking at your data? All right, it's easy to collect it, but making it meaningful and having folks access it in a way that can help them, totally different question. So some things to think about, again, very early stage before you secure that first big source of funding, or maybe right after you secure it, is can the users themselves actually find their data? Can they understand it and can they act on it? There was a webinar that Whoop and a bunch of leading wearables had, and they were saying during the webinar that their largest challenge was actually finding a way to show that they were changing behaviors with the watches that they were creating, right? With the devices they had. Aura was there too. So it's great that we're giving people all of this data so they can pay attention to their heart rate or their body temperature. But if we can't show that they're empowered to change their lives by using it, what are we actually doing? And this was the gold standard. So if you can do this early stage, something that will give you a huge leg up and save you a lot of time later on. So now is a great time to turn back to module 2, focusing on data accessibility and user control. Our first question is just about how data is stored, accessed, or exported by users or clinicians. Our second question is who can see or act on the data. And our third question is actually an accessibility checklist. So by doing a bunch of expert research, we were able to figure out what are the most critical things when it came to accessing a sort of a proper interface, right? So is this something I can see in the dark? Do I need to see it in the dark? Is this something that if it's too bright outside, am I gonna have issues? Is this something that solely is dependent on color? Well, what happens if you're colorblind? Are there physical buttons available? Some folks don't do too well with a touchscreen. Another example is tremor use, right? I have some students right now actually developing a design for folks with Parkinson's and figuring out how they are going to consider all of the symptoms associated with it and deal with tremor and design for that is a very big thing for them. So we assume that folks have like perfect dexterity, which makes no sense if we're making a medical or consumer product, because likely it's somebody who wants help. Otherwise, why would they buy it? So assuming it's something that can be used with a one-handed operation is likely the way to go. So here's some things to think about. We also have our user customization. Can you change things yourself, or is everything going to be predetermined? What if I'm a lefty? Does that change the way the device is designed, or is it the exact same? We also have our use instructions. By this, I mean talk the user through how to use it. Are you going to have a giant guide like they do with your medicine? Or is it going to be the nice, simple little package on the outside? Likely, you're going to have both forms of marketing, but both of them need to be informative. Tell people how to use it, tell people how to troubleshoot. Another thing that folks kind of throw off until the end, but it's very time consuming. And if you're thinking about the folks who want to fund your product, if you can tell people that your users are more likely to use it and adopt it because you have these features, you are going to be much closer to getting what you need. Other things to focus on, the readability of whatever sort of labeling you have. Are your letters spaced in a way that's readable by folks? Do you have enough white space? Is everything colored? These aspects of design typically push towards graphic designers at the end, maybe UX designers, and earlier the better. And then we also have our marketing claims. That one's pretty straightforward. Our battery life. How long do you think this will last? Bluetooth capability. There were some really interesting studies out there about battery life, actually saying that folks who are lower income are consuming more battery life of their devices and are more likely to let them drain, right? So if you're working all day or you're more reliant on something that's small and handheld as opposed to something that's in the hospital, or even like comparing a phone to a laptop in the case of this study, the battery life is actually going to matter a lot. Same with Bluetooth capability, obviously something that seems to be a given nowadays, but something else to think about. And temperature as well. If it's too hot or too cold, how will it make people feel uncomfortable? So with that being said, we're going to move on to module 3. And at the end, you'll have some time to finish up module 2 if you didn't finish it while we were working through this. So module 3 focuses a lot on risk and a hint of regulatory stuff because it matters, of course. So $42 billion are lost on average in worker productivity due to the fact that folks don't have the biotech, the consumer technology, and the products they need to take care of themselves. So I'm here to ask you guys why we are leaving so much of this on the table, because a lot of times the problems we want to solve are very close to us. They're not actually as far as we think. The funding may be further than you think, but the problem's in your neighborhood. So, how many of you guys think that you have properly designed or you want to design for your own community? By this, I mean designing for, if you're a teacher, teachers, designing for folks who are underrepresented racial minorities, designing for women, right? Half the population, and we don't even think about gender when we design. I wasn't trained to think about gender when I design. So a lot of exclusion is accidental, but if we take time and actually reflect about who is in our neighborhood and who we want to help, that alone can get us a lot further. Even thinking about language barriers are something that could make or break a huge difference, right? So we're going to take some time and get to our last module. So module 3, back on our sheet, we're actually going to do an activity. So I'm going to move on to the next slide to see exactly how much money you're leaving on the table. So let's take some time and calculate the risk of denying our own community. I want you guys to pick one marginalized community you're a part of. Obviously, intersectionality matters, but we're just doing some back of the napkin math, right? Google what is that population size in the US? And in our worksheet, you're going to use our table to estimate what is the purchasing power, or I should say, the amount spent on healthcare for that person. So we want to see what community dollars are at risk. If you look at your sheet, this starts at, what is this? Page 10, the bottom of page 9, going into page 10. You can talk about who might have more difficulty using your device, whether it be folks with more body hair, folks who cannot grip as easily, folks who speak languages that aren't English, right? For talking about American design, internet access, smartphone access, income, caregiver availability. And then we'll do our calculation towards the bottom of page 10. So choose your population, Google your size very quickly. And I have a table at the bottom of page 10 going into page 11 about how much folks spend on healthcare. So you can see here, estimated women, $6,000 to $7,000. Estimated, we'll say, on average, for a Hispanic or Latino person, $6,000. For an older person, $12K a year. For adults with chronic disease, could easily be over 15,000. So for the folks that we just say are our edge casers, actually, they are spending quite a bit and even more than we'll say their privileged counterparts on getting the healthcare that they need. So why wouldn't we cater to them? Does anyone have any populations that they would like to do this calculation for? I'm just curious. And if not, we can take some time to reflect. A lot of this material might be new. It's very interdisciplinary by nature. But of course, with all of this, there's a lot of assumptions we're making. So we want to take some time and research all the assumptions we had. But this actually takes us to the end of our document. So you could take some time to do your reflection if you want, but we are going to save that for the last few minutes. So can everyone see my slide about patterns across the industry? Okay, thumbs up. Thank you. So, which of these feel most relevant to your product? Put in the chat. We talked a lot about data access. We talked about friction with onboarding. We talked a lot about assumptions, who it fits, what happens when you're sensing things, what happens when it's too complicated to actually look at your screen if there's some sort of screen associated. Which of these do you think might be the most challenging for designing? And well, folks, oh, wearability and fit are probably the biggest two. Yes, interesting. And fit is something that can be tested with a lot of different experiments, right? Simply asking folks to put it on. You can use a variety of prototyping methods. For example, my students right now are using 3D printing. They're also using foam core. Yes, rapid prototyping technologies for customized devices. I love this. And I'd be curious on hearing more about um, where wearability and fit kind of struggle for you. Because I think sometimes the issue with students, which is the same issue with engineers, is you ask people for feedback, but are you really actually listening? You know, you had them try it on. They said it was a bit too tight, or they said it was kind of comfortable. And all you heard was, okay, it's good enough, right? So sometimes it's a matter of doing the testing. Sometimes it's a matter of being able to actually translate the feedback folks give to you. But thank you for sharing. So congratulations on finishing. At this point, you should be towards the bottom of section 5, where you can actually upload your document. So I encourage you, please, 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 on the last page, you'll see this link that says upload here. Take some time and actually upload what you just completed today. And if you have anything that you want to share, including mock-ups, labeling, all of these documentation that we were talking about in our first slide of what are you working on right now, send all of that in, and we can give you a free report and help you decide what your redesign might look like. So, congratulations. We're 2/3 through of this series. Hopefully you learned something. And I'm also curious, this is the time where we kind of just go into either a Q&A or just more so open dialogue for folks to talk more about what they're working on and what's worked for them. There's a lot of different resources out there. I love that you said rapid prototyping. That's certainly relevant to anyone, including, right, Series A. Series A and students, completely two different parts of the career journey, but still are playing around with foam core and 3D printing and other tools, right? So there's some resources out there that could be of varying use to folks. One of them I want to point folks to is the FDA device guidances. So there are often devices that they come up with specific uses for. In the case of pulse oximeters, right, very important during COVID for measuring oxygenation, they came out with an entire guide about the design of those. So what you're trying to build, there's likely something out there that is similar. And if you're going to think about regulatory research, actually go through and see what's out there and see how they are telling you to design. You'll get a lot of really good feedback, not feedback per se, but you'll get a really good head start if you go through these guidances. There's some other standards out there. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It was wonderful having you. But there's some other resources out there about usability. There's actually something called a system usability scale. I have to be honest, this is something I discovered recently where you are asking the user, is this product easier to use? And whether they perceive it's easier to use or it's actually easier to use is a matter of measurement. But at the end of the day, how they perceive it certainly is going to dictate if they actually keep using it. So today, you documented user workflow, accessibility and customization, data access, communication, and market data. So I want you guys to actually be able to go from your design to impact. In our next session, we're going to talk a lot more about that. What is going on in the market? How to really turn your findings into these design changes that are feasible and get you to the next stage of what you're looking for, whether it be fundraising, whether it be your next version of your prototype. So in case folks are curious, we have this short video right here to show exactly the process of uploading your documentation. So you just go through on our VB website, or we'll upload it for you ourselves. We have some sample devices over here, but you're going to create your own. You're going to use the upload link to drag and drop whatever documents you want, as many as you'd like. And then we're going to do our scoring. So while we do use varying levels of AI, we actually don't expose your data itself to AI, which is a very unique part about how we work with this. And your analysis is actually done through a calculator that's built using research. So there's no black box telling you things that are made up, right? So your finalized report should look something like this. And it might look a little cooler since we've been working on it for some time. But submit this in the next 48 hours and you will get a full prioritized analysis. It should say before workshop 3. And anything that you haven't finished today, please take your time and finish that, ask questions, reach out. But thank you all for attending. If you guys submit, again, you're going to get a free Phoebe analysis. And actually, we want to give you even more support so we can give you guided recommendations and some consultation with our affiliates and our own product design as well. So thank you all. I really appreciate the team at WePam and a lot of folks who have been really pivotal to this process. I will always thank Dr. Heather Metcalf for just being so helpful, Dr. Ursula Sims, and our experts and our product design team, including Gabrielle Moore, Tamara Tomlin, and Mo Rakunas, who gave us a lot of really good feedback about what is investable and really good product design. So thank you all. Does anyone have any questions?
And if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can absolutely come off mute and get on camera if you like and share your question.
Okay, I'm also available by email. You can scan the QR code on this last slide if you'd like to contact me, but more information will be provided, and we definitely look forward to seeing you guys in workshop 3.
Thank you so much. Let's give Renee Kennedy a hand. We appreciate you. This was an amazing workshop in the series. We're looking forward to the next one. I mean, this is amazing stuff.
Yeah, thank you
Awesome.
so
Thank you so
much.
much.